It's been a weird year for games. Every game I'm about to talk about is good and interesting and worth playing, but they're all doing something you've seen before, just doing it very well. This isn't the first recent year I felt that way about either. I'm pretty sure I've done this exact speech on a Game of the Year video before. As we continue to wait for this generation to get off the ground, it feels like the truly new video game experiences have dried up. Maybe I'm old and bitter and cynical, or maybe I just didn't play the right games this year, but nothing really wowed me. That said though, things I played before but done better is very good. So here are my top 10 games of the year. The addition of multiple playable characters to WarioWare could have gone either way. A game as frantic and fast-paced as WarioWare could have become too much to process, having to add the extra step of, how do I beat this 2-second game as this particular character? But it made each time you played a microgame feel fresh and fun. Plus, given all the characters aren't created remotely equally, I did a video on that earlier this year, ranking just how badly these characters are created equally, in a fun way. It introduced organic difficulty to the game. And then, at its core, Get Together is just another silly, creative WarioWare game. I don't think I've ever been more disappointed in a very good game than Rift Apart. All the preview and review coverage presented it as the moment the power of the PS5 had truly arrived. All of the trailers were bursting with colour and energy. It looked like the first next-gen moment amid a sea of games that felt held back by cross-gen. And then I played it, and it was just another very good Ratchet and Clank game. It's doing very little mechanically and even visually than the also very good game that preceded it. You level up guns, you clear rooms, you explore mostly linear but occasionally more open, but also barren, areas, and you blast through the story. It's very good. It just didn't live up to the hype of a transformative next-gen experience, given the rifts felt inessential in combat and more like doors during exploration. It might be the most disappointed I've ever been in a game that's like 8.5 out of 10. Ah well. What if you could drift as a dinosaur through an alien invasion chasing a giant flaming donut? A question I'm sure you've asked yourself many times, and a question only Cruis'n Blast can answer. While realistic racing sims are all the rage these days, Cruis'n Blast unabashedly embraces its arcade roots, to deliver racing more concerned with how it feels rather than whether it's true to actual cars. There are giant yetis, earthquakes that change tracks, the floor collapses out from under you multiple times, wonderful and ridiculous vehicle options, and it all feels incredible to play. More people need to play Cruis'n Blast. Bravely Default 2 rolls credits 4 times before you actually beat the game. There is a lot of game in the game. Arguably, too much game in the game. But if you like lots of game in your games, this is the game for you. Given this is the third in the series with Octopath Traveler 2, they've gotten these throwback RPGs down to a science. If you miss everything about the Super Nintendo era of Final Fantasy, this game is for you. If you enjoy seeing numbers go up, this game is for you. If you'd like to pretend it's still 1995 and every video game has a cool job system, then this game is certainly for you. Metroid Dread feels really good to play. Everything about the running and jumping and shooting feels so smooth. As the movement options unlock and the constraints are removed, it does that video game magic act of making you grateful for a thing the game just decided not to give you, so you'd be happy when it did. It's such good stuff. It's very fun to see how Dread evolved from Samus Returns, as Mercury's team iterated on all the ideas they had and improved on them. Better controls, way better visual variety, a better map, better implementation of the idea of persistent boss fights, tremendous boss fights in general, and I hate 90% of boss fights. It doesn't revolutionize the 2D Metroid format, but it does deliver a perfectly refined version of it. Guardians of the Galaxy is the most pleasant surprise of the year. The characters talk so much. They literally never stop talking for the entire game. It's just yap, bicker, snipe. And somehow it doesn't suck? It's an astounding feat of writing that these characters talk this much and aren't the most annoying people on Earth. This game is like 15 hours long, and I didn't come out hating a single person. It's remarkable. Gameplay-wise, controlling the other Guardians through commands while Star-Lord is the only playable character works quite well. Elements feel sadly shackled to last gen. You'll do a lot of shimmying over ledges slowly to hide loading. but this feels as good of a Guardians game as the 2018 PS4 game was for Spider-Man. We've had plenty of games harken back to the NES and Super Nintendo RPGs. One of them was earlier on this list, but the PS1 era is unmined territory. So for Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, to produce a game that feels like a fourth main series Final Fantasy release on the PS1, in what may well be his final game, feels fitting in many ways. Fantasia's main hook is that each of its levels and environments is actually real. The game uses handcrafted dioramas scanned by drones to create each city and town and dungeon you pass through. The effect is quite striking, creating a visual aesthetic unlike anything else, and one that surprisingly doesn't jar with the regular 3D character models. Everything about the tone and characters and music and feel of this game reminds me of a PS1 Final Fantasy game. It's such a wonderfully nostalgic experience. Many of the biggest problems with Returnal have now been fixed. At launch, the decision to not allow for saving mid-run was a baffling one. Even games like Hades and Dead Cells, where most runs top out at around half an hour, save after each area. Given many Returnal runs could run upwards of 2 hours, forcing the player to commit to all or nothing was a bewildering choice. That, coupled with the game's propensity to crash, meant losing runs was not only possible, but also likely. That was unforgivable at the time, but given they've since added the ability to save during runs and presumably made the game more stable, it's nothing you'll have to deal with now. The game itself is tremendous. I might have some qualms about whether the roguelite structure was truly the best fit for this particular game, and whether the risk-reward systems feel balanced, but the combat and movement feel wonderful, the world building and art design suck you in, and the story, while silly and abstract at times, is compelling enough to warrant further examination. Hitman 3 felt like a triumphant celebration. IO Interactive going from their future being in jeopardy following being offloaded by Square Enix in 2017, to delivering a polished trilogy of games that showcased the very best Hitman has ever been, is one of the most heartwarming success stories in modern video games. Hitman 3 may not have quite the same wow factor as the previous two games in the trilogy. It's just more Hitman at the end of the day. But it feels like the culmination of 20 years of the franchise and 5 years of the trilogy. Not all levels are created equal, but the Dartmoor map is up there as one of the very best in the series. Who doesn't want a Knives Out Hitman level? As the IO team moves on to a James Bond game, they can be very proud of the work they did on Hitman. 2D Zelda through the lens of From Software. Extremely satisfying combat that really shines in the optional boss fights. A superb, enchanting score, brilliantly clever level design that constantly loops back on itself and opens up progress and shortcuts. Well written, dungeons that don't suck. Most dungeons in most games suck, I'm sorry. A really fun premise that is surprisingly similar to Loki given they were both out at the exact same time. Lovely art design. The only real knock I can have about Death's Door is it doesn't have a map. Every game is better with a map. I beat it in 2 long sittings. It sucked me right into its world with its lovely crow. It's a good crow. Top-notch crow. One of the better video game crows. And most of all, it feels like it only scratched the surface. It feels like a tremendous foundation to build off and expand upon in a sequel. Death's Door was a tremendous game. Death's Door was the best game I played in 2021. Well, that's it. That's Game of the Year for 2021. If there's any games that weren't on this list that you think should have been, drop them in the comments. Always looking for more games to play. And thankfully, I don't have to dip back into games I've already played to get more gameplay footage. Very bad gameplay footage, because I've forgotten how to play the games. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, maybe hit subscribe, maybe slap a like. On your left, my Game of the Year 2020. On your right, my Game of the Year 2019. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.